Hello, everyone. As you all file in, please feel free to let us know in the chat where you're joining us from today, what kind of weather you have where you are. We're a little bit rainy here in Sacramento, but hopefully, hopefully it'll just pass soon so that we can get back to the sunshine. All right, so welcome and thank you for joining us for this webinar on leadership today. As you get settled, a few reminders. Please use the Q&A section for any questions today, and remember to be constructive in any of those questions or comments to the presenter and to one another to ensure that we have a session that is productive. AIA California will submit one AIA Learning Unit for those who complete this live session in full. And as always, the webinar content and additional resources will be available online soon. Today's webinar, which will focus on developing the next generation of leaders, is brought to you by BQE. Again, it qualifies for one AIA Learning Unit for those watching live, which AIA California will report for you once you have finished the session in full. Now to introduce our presenter. As a distinguished thought leader, Steve blends his passion for design and firm management with profound insights into emerging technologies. Over the past 2 decades, working directly with over 1,400 firm owners, Steve has significantly contributed to reshaping these businesses for enhanced growth and sustainability. Steve's career highlights include a 7-year tenure at SOM Chicago, founding BBA Architects in 1993 and growing it to 17 architects before its 2007 sale, and creating Arca Office, a groundbreaking project management software company acquired by BQE Software in 2010. Recognized for his significant impact on the profession, in 2009, Steve was elevated to the AIA College of Fellows. Currently, as a founder of the Well-Designed Firm, he focuses on leading AE firms to operational excellence, mentoring leaders to craft businesses as elegant and innovative as the architecture they create. All right, always great to see you, Steve. Please take it away.
Okay, Rebecca, well, thanks for the introduction. Way too long and way too embarrassing, but I guess thanks for doing that. I'm going to go ahead and replace current share. So I guess I'm going to share my screen, and that should work. Let's see. And then just for funds, we'll do this small. Let's get me out of there. Okay, cool. So welcome, everybody. And it is raining down here as well in Los Angeles. But today we are going to really discuss a follow-on topic from my webinar, which was last quarter. Hopefully you were able to attend that. It was on succession planning and leadership transition. And today what we're going to do is we're going to look at how you can identify that next generation of leadership that's in your firm, and then how you can develop them through their career so that they are in fact prepared to take on the mantle when you are ready to hand it to them, and they'll be able to then move your firm into the future. Now, this is actually a very personal topic for me as a now serial entrepreneur who has now successfully created and sold 3 businesses. And so clearly succession planning needs to be a part of the horizon. And as architects, we are really trained to have a vision, to lead, to believe in the value of our ideas. And that confidence is actually very critical in creating great work. But when it comes to running a firm, ego can sometimes become a little bit of a liability. Now, a lot of firms do revolve around the star designer or a founder, or someone whose reputation and their vision really define that firm. But here is the very hard truth. If your firm's value is tied to you, it can't survive without you. And that is not a business. That's really a dependency. Succession planning requires humility. It really means acknowledging that your firm's long-term success, it has to be bigger than your ego. So today we're just going to talk about how to shift from this founder-driven leadership to a model where your team and your processes carry that value forward, and that ensures that your legacy will thrive without you. Now, and the best knock-on effect of properly setting up your firm and your team for succession and transition is this will dramatically increase the value of your business. Now, as I take you through this presentation today, I'm also going to share a few real world examples with you. These are based on my experiences over nearly 40 years, and as Rebecca mentioned, having dealt with more than 1,400 AE firms. But we are going to start. Oh, no, I'm not going to start with the poll. I forgot about this. We got a poll coming up in a minute. But I know you are all busy working on projects, enjoying that hit of dopamine that we get while we're participating in the design and construction of our built environment. It's what really does drive us. But as business owners, you simultaneously have the ability to create value in your company while creating value for your clients. And your objective is to maximize your firm's value. So when you are ready to step away from the business, you're going to have a team who's prepared to carry that torch. And just as importantly, they can afford to pay the price for ownership. So I do want to dive into why leadership development isn't something that would be nice to have. We're busy, working on our projects, and that's really where 99% of our focus seems to be. And we think, oh, well, leadership development is something we could probably do in our company, but it's actually a business necessity. That's what I want to make very clear to you. First, just think about the cost of neglecting leadership training. When your firm fails to invest in leadership, the cracks are going to show up in, for example, turnover rates. You're going to start to see talented employees leave you because they just don't feel valued and supported. They don't see a future for themselves. And this turnover isn't really just inconvenient. It actually is quite expensive. It's taking the time and investing in recruiting and then onboarding new team members until they can finally become really productive members of your firm. That does take time and money, not to mention the hit it has on the morale when other people in the office see their colleagues, probably some very promising colleagues, just walk out the door. There is also, by the way, another problem, which is the kind of missed opportunities that your firm loses on innovation and growth. Strong leadership isn't just about managing people. It's about inspiring them. Without leadership that empowers and it motivates, you do risk losing the energy and the ideas that kind of push a firm forward. So I do want to shift to what does happen when you do get the leadership right. Strong leadership, it's the foundation of a firm's culture. It builds trust that the employees are going to be supported, they're going to be heard, trust that their work actually matters, trust that they can take risks without the fear of failure. That trust creates loyalty and accountability, which are two essential ingredients for a team if you want it to perform at its best. And if you have attended any of my other webinars, there are many dozens of them out there floating around. I encourage you certainly to see the one that precedes this one on succession planning. But you will recognize my use of this term, loyalty and trust. I often use that in discussions about nurturing a prospect or a client. I'm very fond of saying that loyalty and trust is the most important thing you want to receive from your clients, perhaps second only to their money. Once you've earned the loyalty and trust from your clients, you are seen as what we refer to as a trusted advisor. But the same holds true of your own team. Creating the right culture, it yields loyalty and trust. And this is why, by the way, many of you consider your team to be like your family. It's just an essential quality of a family. And when you do have that camaraderie, you're doing the right thing. It's also critical for your client relationships because clients don't just work with the firm, they work with the people in the firm. And then when the leadership throughout the firm is strong, it creates consistency and confidence throughout the team and the way your clients see your firm. These are qualities, of course, that the client will notice, and they do in fact value them. Okay, so now, Rebecca, poll question number one. And the sooner we get these poll questions answered, and I love sharing them with everybody so you can see what the rest of today's attendees are thinking, we get more time for the Q&A. Although if Rebecca allows, I'll stay on as long as you all want for Q&A. But this is, how does your firm currently approach its leadership development? Do you have a formalized program with very clear pathways for how people move up the let's call it the corporate ladder? Do you provide formal mentoring, but you don't actually have a structured approach? It's not clearly defined, and your employees don't see that in any meaningful way. Do you rely on just on-the-job learning? There's no real focus on leadership. It's just something that's supposed to be gained through osmosis. Or leadership development just is not currently a priority for us. So Rebecca, oh, looks like I've managed to talk my way through you while you all did that. But 50% of you do have some informal mentoring, and there is no structured approach. That's not surprising. It's very close between those of you who do have a formalized program in place with those very clear pathways, 20%, and then 22%, just beating that out, is just on the job learning. There's no focus on leadership, and only 8% of you have absolutely nothing going on there. So there you go, folks. That's how the rest of today's attendees feel about that particular issue. Okay, so I did promise that I would give you some real world examples. So I do want to begin with my first one. It is not surprising that most successful firms are large firms. They have highly developed processes, and they benefit from the economies of scale. But they also provide us with a model of how to do things well. So for example, it was in mid-December that I came across a press release from a firm, HKS. It's a large firm. And they made an announcement about their next CEO. And they stated that he was going to take a year of what they called apprenticeship and preparation. And he was going to do that by working alongside their current CEO. And they stated that he was going to take this period of a year in order to create this seamless and a collaborative transition. So clearly, that is a firm that takes preparing their next generation of leaders very seriously, and they understand how that is going to be perceived by the public. And so that's why they issued a press release. And I started to look at all their news and on their website, and I realized that this is not isolated to the CEO's position. Firms that publicly promote, highlight, spotlight their leadership candidates, they're creating the right culture. They're reinforcing their brand value. And the wider that beam of light that you can spread across your staff, your team, the more resilient the firm. If you're one of those firms that has a very narrow focus on that beam of light, it's like on the principle of the firm, the luminary. That's the problem firm that I think I want you to try not to be. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, I'm going to give you, I came across an AIA case study back in 2023, and it features an unfortunate firm. I think they protected them with the pseudonym of Dunker Nash Architects, because I tried to do my research on it. I realized there really isn't a Dunker Nash, but because of the problems that firm encountered, they kept it under a pseudonym. But I did, in fact, figure out which firm it was and in which city it is. The firm had about 12 employees for a fairly consistent period of time. And in a very short period of time, they grew to 35 employees. But it almost collapsed because there was a total absence of succession planning and any sort of a formalized leadership development program. What happened was their key staff was jumping ship because they didn't see that there was a serious effort by the founders to ensure their futures. What they heard was a lot of lip service, but there's no real enactment of a plan or any kind of a tangible change that could assure these mid-career professionals that they actually had a long-term future with the firm. And you think about this, if you've been with the firm for 10 years, 15 years, and suddenly it grows from where it's been holding steady to tripling in its size, and all of these stranger people are kind of coming in, some of them at the same level you are, but there's nothing there that can help you be assured that you have a future in the firm in a meaningful way. You're going to start wondering what's happened to this place. This isn't the place I remember, and let me see what opportunities might exist for me elsewhere. Also, leadership isn't just about giving people a title or having in your your vision for your firm, the long-term vision is something that you've articulated. These are nice things to have, I guess, but it's really about what happens in the office every single day. So I want to talk about two critical practices that help build strong, sustainable leadership. And first up, and maybe if you've attended my other webinars, you've heard me talk about how we deal with delegation. Delegation is often misunderstood. It's not just offloading a task. It's actually about entrusting other people with meaningful responsibilities that allow them to grow, and more interesting, for those around them to witness their growth. So as a leader, your goal should be to develop the people around you, not to do everything yourself or just look at those people as your worker bees. So think about the projects that are on your plate right now. Are there any opportunities to involve somebody else in a meaningful way? Maybe a younger team member could lead the next client meeting, or your project managers could take on take on not just the budgeting of a project, in the management of it, but the preparation of the project fees, just increasing their accountability. And when you delegate properly, you're actually signaling trust. And trust, again, is one of the most powerful motivators for an emerging leader, being trusted. It's critical for it to work. It's important to remember this delegation is having the ability to delegate is actually a skill. It does require clarity. So instead of just handing off a task, outline what's the desired outcomes, provide the necessary resources, and stay connected, stay available for support. And over time, you will notice that your team is stepping up, they're gaining confidence, they are contributing at a higher level. And as they grow, so does the capacity of your firm. Now, the second daily practice is, again, something I talk about all the time, which is transparency. And in this case, it's especially transparent communication. Leadership doesn't exist in a vacuum. Your team can only align with your vision if they really understand it. And transparency is another thing that builds trust. And trust fosters a sense of purpose, and it creates commitment. And transparency, by the way, isn't just about sharing things that reflect well against you and on you and your firm. It's about being open about the challenges you're facing. So if your firm has currently maybe some financial difficulties, or your business strategy is not working out and it's becoming quite obvious and you need to pivot in your strategy, please invite your team into this conversation. People respect honesty, and they are far more likely to really rally behind your solution or a solution when they feel like they were included in it. Transparent communication also includes active listening. So encourage your team to share their ideas, their concerns, make it clear their voices matter to you. It not only creates a more inclusive environment, but it sparks innovation and collaboration. Now, leadership development doesn't have to be some grand initiative. And a lot of you are probably hedging against even implementing something in your firm because you think, yeah, I don't want to get something started because it's going to consume so much of my time and effort. And I don't want it to just, stall halfway through the project. But it doesn't have to be grand. Some of the best strategies are very simple practices, and you can implement them right now, right after today's webinar. So I want to explore two of the tools that you have already on hand where you could start to manifest these qualities. First is meetings which are often seen as a necessary evil, but they can be very powerful platforms for leadership development. And a simple idea that I want you to integrate into your routine is this concept. It's called leadership minutes. And this is how it works. Dedicate the first, or actually, I prefer the last few minutes of every team meeting to a short leadership training topic. So, for example, you could discuss a real-world leadership challenge, share an article about some decision-making techniques, role play how you're going to handle a very tough client conversation. There's a myriad or an infinite number of kinds of role playing that you could do of situations, but you keep this meeting minutes short. It's like 5-10 minutes at the most. Most importantly is you make this a consistent part of your meetings. And over time, these very small intentional moments are going to add up. It's going to start to create this culture where leadership is always on the radar. And it also gives the emerging leaders these regular opportunities to engage and share their personal perspectives. And even in your small firms where you implement this type of a meeting minute in your team meetings, even if your team is just 2 or 3 people, you're going to see it's going to have a huge impact because it's going to build these leadership skills incrementally without requiring any significant time or resources. Now, the second tool is combining job shadowing with reverse mentoring. This is what's going to create a two-way learning experience. So job shadowing is very straightforward. You pair an emerging leader with a senior team member to observe their decision-making process. How are they actually engaging and interacting with your clients, or how they manage and handle project management? It's a hands-on way to pass down knowledge and model leadership behaviors. And I think it was 50% of you in my previous poll are basically doing this already. It's sort of the thing I talked about by like passing on knowledge through this sort of osmosis behavior, by making sure they're being exposed to your behavior. It also makes, by the way, the existing leaders behave or perform at a higher level when they see that they are being observed. And that's a natural human behavior that if we know we're being observed, we will start applying best practices, be on our best behavior, want to be a role model because we don't want to be seen in a bad light. Now, reverse mentoring, on the other hand, it actually flips the dynamic. The senior leader works very closely with the younger, or let's say the less experienced team member, just to get some fresh perspectives. It could be on technology, because many of them are coming, often straight out of school and are basically the most tech capable. It could be about new design trends. It could be that the fact that they are more in tune with the workplace culture and the principal, the founder, the partners, the management is sometimes separated from the rest of the group. But this acknowledges to the staff that leadership isn't just about teaching. It's not like a one-way dump. It's also about learning. It's an exchange. And by the way, it's not a weakness to admit that we don't know everything. If you conduct an exit interview with employees who leave your firm, whether on their own volition or you're just showing them the door. But if you conduct that exit interview, you're going to learn that almost without exception, people leave because of the behaviors of their manager. So in small firms, that's most typically, of course, the principal or partner. They leave when that individual is intractable, they're obstinate, they're incapable of sharing the spotlight. Now, they might have unreasonable expectations, or they could be harshly critical, but don't provide the requisite amount of support and guidance for the tasks that they've delegated. These kinds of behaviors by these managers are the things that people will run from. Now, for small firms, this approach of this reverse mentorship, it works very well because it strengthens relationships within your team. It reinforces this collaborative culture, and it ensures that knowledge is being shared both ways, bidirectionally. It's an investment in your people that pays dividends in your team's cohesion and your firm's growth. Okay, Rebecca, it is poll number 2, which is, do you believe that your firm is prepared for a leadership transition? And the extreme example would be, what if the owner or a partner in the firm, got hit by a bus and is no longer a part of your firm? It happens on a Thursday. Friday, come to work that day. Are you going to be prepared for transition? Yes, we have a solid succession plan in place. Or, well, somewhat, but there is some room for improvement, but we will be okay. Or no, we haven't started planning yet, and we're going to be just putting out the fire in real time. Or the last one is, I actually don't even know where to begin with this. If that happened, I would be totally lost. So, Rebecca, when you sense we are at our, everybody's put in or the reasonable amount of, okay, there we go. We're ready to share. So 60% of you are somewhat there, but you do recognize you can improve on that. Good. Your next step is to really figure out what you need to improve. And then it's almost tied once again between you do have a solid succession plan and just 2%, 2 percentage points more are like the first poll. No, we haven't even started planning yet at 18%. And just 6%, I think it was 8% of you in the previous one or at the bottom, don't even know how to begin that. So great, good. We're going to appreciate that. Thank you for that. We're going to move on. Now, leadership development isn't going to be a one-size-fits-all process for all of you. What works for the larger firms with hundreds or maybe even thousands of employees is going to be totally overwhelming for that small team of, 5 or 10 people. So let's explore practical, scalable leadership practices, and we're going to tailor them, to the mid-size, the small, the mid, and the larger firms. So in your small firms, we all know this, everybody wears multiple hats. And that's both a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. Leadership development can happen organically by encouraging team members to take on cross-functional roles. Give them a hat to wear. So maybe a project architect might also start managing your firm's marketing efforts, or deal with building out your website, which is a marketing effort, or overseeing the client billing or even collections. These responsibilities expose them to different facets of the business, and it can build their leadership and their decision-making skills. And for those of you in the larger firms who are like, oh my God, why would I have a project manager be involved in collections? That's because you can't imagine that happening because you've got somebody in an accounting department or a bookkeeper or a full-time staff. But for some of those small firms, all of that responsibility falls on the shoulders of the principal, the owner of the firm. And so they have to be done by somebody. And if you're looking for one of those people on your team to become a leader one day, and when you become too old to work those 60-hour weeks that you seem to be working, or even the 40-hour weeks, you're going to have somebody in place who's very familiar with this. So the key for any of this is going to be intentionality. When you assign those roles, when you hand in a hat to an employee, explain how what they're going to be doing contributes to your firm's overall success, and it aligns them with that individual's career growth. That approach not only develops leaders, but it strengthens your team's ability to adapt and to collaborate in a small scale environment. Yes, it is true that a lot of younger architects, or you're trying to move them into a growth stage, don't appreciate and understand some of the responsibilities. They may not want it. So they need to understand it and why it's important to the firm, and why having them learn it. It's like when we're in school and we're, being exposed to mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, structural engineering, all of these disciplines that are totally important for our the work that we do. We're not going to spend our careers doing it, but it gives us a great appreciation when we have to work with the MEP engineers or, civil and structural engineers. Now, the mid-sized firms, they have the resources to formalize leadership development. They often do that through mentorship programs, but those programs are going to, pair one of the emerging leaders with an experienced team member. Again, that's that two-way transfer of knowledge, building the relationship. But please keep in mind that this pairing of the mentor and the mentee is bi-directionally beneficial. Mentors need to appreciate and participate in this reverse mentoring process. And please don't think it's just a one-way teaching technique. The leader becomes better and likewise will build a better, more valuable business simply by participating in a mentorship program. It's like that old expression about, uh, what gets measured gets managed, or if you have KPIs, which I'm always talking about in my webinars, key performance indicators to help run your firm. If you don't measure anything, you can't manage it. But just by the fact that you have these being presented to you, like you're participating in a mentorship program, or you're actually looking at what is your firm's realization rates or your employees' realization rates, that means now you can manage that. So just participating is the first step to really making meaningful change. Again, mentorship doesn't have to be limited to technical skills, about being an architect, right? Encourage the mentor to share their insights, their experiences on client management and negotiation techniques and the challenges that they've faced. It's a much more holistic approach, and it's going to prepare that mentee to step into this leadership role with confidence. And the added benefit is mentorship programs deepen the team loyalty and their engagement, because the employees will see that the firm values their growth and invests in their future, which just helps reduce turnover and it fosters a strong culture. Now, in the large firms out there, leadership development requires a much more structured approach, certainly to accommodate that scale, and it often means they have to build a very formal training pathway or training program. They'll have these rotational leadership roles. Structured training, by the way, like for this could include leadership workshops, online courses, even external coaching sessions, which are tailored to not just the firm's needs, but also the unique needs of every one of those individuals. And by the way, coaching is something that's great for sole proprietors to the firms with thousands of employees. It doesn't matter, but I'm just pointing that out in this case. But when you have a program like this, it needs to provide a very clear roadmap for the employees who do aspire to become future leaders. Those rotational roles, they could take it a step further by giving the employees real hands-on experience in very different areas of the firm. It could be the project management, which many of you will always do, business development, or business operations. This practice not only broadens their skills, but helps them understand the firm's big picture, making them much more effective leaders. It also removes a lot of the mystery that younger junior architects have in those large firms, where they see there's no correlation between work being done in the back office and their job in the trenches making great architecture. You've got to bridge that gap between the front and the back office so that your employees, your future leaders, have a true deep appreciation for the work that's happening behind the scenes. Now, this leadership development, it does start with recognizing one's potential. So how are you going to identify who, in fact, if your team is ready to step up and ensure that they have the tools to thrive? So I want to explore how you're going to spot the emerging leader and how you're going to provide them with that clear pathway to growth. And the great leaders don't always announce themselves. So it's going to be upon each of you to look beyond what's their current job title, or if you're hiring new people, what is written on their resume. As we all know, that is never the right indicator of what their potential is going to look like once they're in your office. So I do want to point out some key traits that you need to look for. The first one is initiative. Do they take ownership of tasks? Do they really seek out solutions? Do they go the extra mile? Now, sometimes those kinds of people who have all three of those qualities might appear to some of you as a real pain in the butt because you might offer them your own guidance as to what that solution ought to be like, but you're delegating this, don't forget. And if you end up being frustrated that they don't just execute on your recommendation, but they are looking at alternatives, if that's frustrating you, I'm going to suggest that the problem is probably with you and not so much with them. Once again, this relates back to our earlier discussion about the tactics you use when you delegate. If you're looking for a lackey, somebody who's just mindlessly executing your requests, you're not demonstrating the traits of a good leader. You're more likely the type of a personality that leads to people leaving the firm for some other opportunities. The next characteristic would be empathy. Can they really understand and connect with others? Building trust, collaboration, that kind of thing. Watch how they interact with their colleagues, with the leadership in the firm, with your clients, with the vendors, with your consultants, with the contractors. And if these individuals earn the trust of all of these categories of people, you have yourself a ripe candidate as an emerging leader. Let's start putting a little more water on that plant. Please understand, not everybody has this trait inherently, but it can, in fact, be nurtured. I am a big fan of Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, and I suggest you give each new employee a copy of that book when you hire them. And for those of you who don't know, read it and get it for everybody in your staff, regardless of how long they've been working with you. The book is probably like $10 only. You can get that on Amazon for like so little money. It has absolutely nothing to do with architecture, but it will make you and your staff a better architect, and I promise you that. And they'll just make them better at human interaction. So the last quality here I want to talk about is adaptability. How are they responding to change? Certainly these unexpected events or challenges that are thrown upon us. And by the way, the same holds true for you as an existing leader. How do you react when a client makes a radical change on your project? But for the emerging leadership, this is easy for you to nurture since you're going to be tasking those team members with enacting that change. So are they going to groan? Do they get frustrated? Do they look at this as some new opportunity and are chomping at the bit to get ready on it? So are these individuals that are looking beyond the immediate problem and thinking about that big picture? Okay, so those are those traits. I should mention, to help you identify the leaders with those traits, you can use a mix of tools. So there's feedback surveys. Now, I am very fond of these anonymous, you get input from your peers. It could be typically through a 360-degree performance review. If you're not familiar, that's where every employee in a company reviews every employee, including the leadership. Okay, so even the principal in the firm is being reviewed by the youngest juniors member of a company. Or it could be done through a blind survey. So if you're not going to do it as part of your performance review techniques, then certainly start introducing these blind surveys to get the staff to talk about and evaluate other people in the firm. And regardless of which of these you use, it's going to reveal who the others in the firm see as a natural leader. There's actually a famous example. It's from a large company in Switzerland. It's called Hoff Humantis, in which they use this particular method to not only create their management team, but it was to decide who the CEO of the company would be. So the employees basically elected or selected not just who their bosses are, but who the CEO of that company is. They have to, that's a real meritocracy. They have to earn it because the rest of it's like when you're being picked for a team in sports, who's going to be the captain of the team? It's somebody who ought to really have the respect of every other player on that team. Next tool that you can consider would be these project evaluations. Some of you do very formal ones, others are a little less so. review the past performance at the project level, looking for evidence of, where was the initiative taken? How did we problem solve? It's a post-mortem exercise after every project that it's not only great at identifying who the leadership is in the firm, but it's actually great at improving your own project processes. And it creates the opportunity for the entire team to build a better business. It's like reviewing the game's video of how you behaved on the field and doing deconstructing it and evaluating what moves, how could you do better during the next game? Well, that's what you need to do in your firm every time a project is completed. How did we perform on the field there? And what are we going to do better next time so we, perform better? And last, there's just these informal observations, which I think about half of you are already engaging in. Pay attention during meetings, during your team interactions. Often these potential leaders, they emerge when they speak up and they help other people, or maybe they guide a discussion. That's why, by the way, I'm extremely fond of today's sponsor today. I'm very fond of their HR module over at BQE Software, because they've got this area where the team or the leadership can document all the wins and losses, big or small, that happen throughout the year, so that when you finally do sit down for a formal performance review, you can really look at all the details and not just speak from your memory. Very often, something happened in January of the year, you're having a performance review in December, you've forgotten about that because it's not so fresh in your mind. But wow, looking through the 15 things you documented throughout the year about the wonderful achievements of each employee, or the areas where you really felt they fell short for you and you think they need to be improved, at the time, that kind of criticism may not have been very well received, but at the time of the performance review, you can go back. Now, once you have identified these potential leaders, your next step is nurturing their growth with individualized plans. And again, this is also not like a one-size-fits-all approach. It needs to align with each person's strengths and goals. And just think about those Venn diagrams that you might create for your business or your personal self. It's like, what are my skill sets? What do I love doing? What does the market need, right? So this employee who's a leadership role, what are their particular unique skills? What is it that they really want to be doing in the future? Where do they see their futures? And how does it serve the firm? You could tailor workshops or coaching sessions to very specific areas of growth. This could be communications. We're just going to really dig deep in how to be a better communicator. How do we delegate? One of my favorites. How do we do strategic planning? Give emerging leaders some real world chances to practice. So assign them to lead a project, to present to a client, to spearhead some internal initiative. These experiences, they're really invaluable for building confidence and skills. Again, pair them with the senior leader for guidance and ensure that they're receiving regular constructive feedback. Growth will happen faster when it is supported by reflection and guidance. So if you decided this year that one of your initiatives was to start to enhance your firm's website, you believe you wanted to add a section where we're going to really build out some case studies about our projects, so that our prospects and our existing clients can really learn of what the experience is like. Make them accountable, just like they are with their projects, to get their work done, to design what's about to happen, what will it be like, and to build that content. But you're there to support them, but they have to be accountable to make sure that that's going to actually, in fact, happen. Now, as far as sharing some real-world examples for you, I'm going to share a very personal story from my own firm, BBA Architects. And about 5 years after founding the firm, my founding partner and I noticed we had 2 young architects in our office. We had 12 people at the time who had repeatedly distinguished themselves, but they did it in very different ways. So one was not only a superior design talent, she had a confidence that was reassuring to our clients without being overbearing. She was an excellent listener, a very collaborative problem solver. But her initiative was frankly her most distinguishing quality, because within weeks of having hired her, she took it upon herself to build out our resource library. So she looked around saying, well, at my previous firm, we had everything I needed. Our firm, which was pretty young at the time, hadn't very many things for her in the resource library. So she just started calling vendors, and suddenly we just boxes started arriving. People were walking in with brochures and material samples, providing these lunch and learns. This was not anything that she asked permission to do. She simply noticed a void and she filled it. Now, after a couple of years, we finally ended up building a special room in the office for meeting with our clients and presenting our color and material concepts. And now, from my perspective, she's helping differentiate our firm from other firms in a way that clearly benefit our clients, it benefited the projects, and it really benefited the value that our firm had. Now, the second employee is a very different animal. But he was on our radar as a future leader. His passion and skills were purely technical, whether it was, building or managing the project and its construction budget, or organizing and developing the most comprehensive and efficient set of construction documents, or being out in the field to work out some real world problems being faced by the construction crew. This is where he was in his comfort zone. The bigger the problem, the bigger the smile this guy had. So if something wasn't going as planned, it wasn't about pointing a finger or getting frustrated. It was for him, let's find the way out of this. So my partner and I recognized that here were two people who not only made us a better firm, but they really exhibited complementary qualities and skills that would allow us to prepare a future succession plan. Now, over the next few years, we continued to expose them to really increasing challenges of running a business, from helping with our annual financial budgeting, developing our website and our brochures, how we built our proposal letters or responded to RFPs, how bonuses and raises were being distributed. They were part of that discussion. How we did our billing and how we had collections, and even the rare but draconian issue that occurs when one of you has a litigious client, as we had a couple of. 5 years later, we felt they had reached the level of maturity. They demonstrated their commitment to our firm. And so my partner and I each sold 8% of our shares of the company to each of those individuals. And then 10 years after that, when I decided to leave the full-time practice of architecture to build out my software company, they were in the position mentally and financially to purchase my shares. And probably more importantly, the 15 other employees in the firm had looked up to each of these junior partners as leaders, and they were unfazed by having a founder leave the firm. Indeed, they actually saw that our firm was truly committed to the advancement of the staff, and that true ownership and leadership were possible in the firm, and they could see themselves in that equation for the future. Okay, Rebecca, poll question number 3 is, what do you see as the biggest challenge in developing a future leaders at your firm? Are you scratching your head trying to figure out who of these people in our firm right now could become a potential leader? You just don't see it. Is it that you just really have trouble providing training and growth opportunities? Is it trying to find ways to really delegate those meaningful responsibilities where those people can not just be, the worker before you, but actually be accountable and really rise to the occasion? Or is it just, you find it just possible to maintain engagement and loyalty amongst your team members? So what is your biggest challenge right now? And then Rebecca, as previously, when you feel the results are slowing down, the votes are slowing down, let's just go ahead and share that with everybody. Okay, here we come. So 42% of you have trouble really giving meaningful responsibilities to these future leaders. That is followed closely by providing the training and growth opportunities. That's followed by really getting the team to be engaged and really feel like a part of that family in your firm, where one day they will become the matriarch or patriarch of that family. That's a common difficult problem. That's a culture. These are all really basically culture issues. And just only 7% of you are having trouble, which is really great, because sometimes on this poll question, that's very often one of the biggest problems is for the firm founders or owners finding other people who they believe could be sitting in their chair one day. So thank you for that. Let us move on to the next one. This was a important slide for me to build out for you, but I really believe this leadership is not a one-time effort. To future-proof your firm, you really need what I refer to as a leadership pipeline. Basically, that's a system that is continuously identifying, developing, and of course, supporting those future leaders. So and please, if you are a four-person firm, this applies to you just as much as it does for the larger firms. So let's just talk about some strategies to create this sort of self-sustaining pipeline. And the first step is just to embed leadership development into the DNA of your firm. It means you tie leadership goals to your firm's KPIs and to your performance reviews. So for example, instead of just measuring about how a project was delivered, evaluate how your team members are growing in their leadership capacity, their decision-making skills, their communication and their mentorship skills. These indicators should become a part of the metrics that you are regularly assessing, just like you do with the financial performance of your firm or your project timelines and so forth. If you're getting client feedback through surveys throughout your project's life cycle, first, I applaud you for doing that. That is a phenomenal, mature thing for firms to do. But you do get, in that case, great information from those people who are really most critical to your firm. It's your clients. If you've got a project manager who has been unable to maintain the trust of your client, you're going to want to know that as close to real time as possible. That's because you can like step in and assuage your client, but you're also going to be there now to help mentor your manager into cultivating the proper skills or empathy, whatever is lacking that is not winning over your client's loyalty and trust. Equally important is establishing a culture of leadership. That means just creating an environment where everybody sees themselves as a part of your firm's growth, not just the partners or the senior staff. You're going to do this by celebrating leadership at all levels. It could be a junior architect who took the initiative on a project, or a project manager who's mentoring one of their colleagues. When leadership is part of your culture, it's not seen as a privilege for a select few. It's actually a shared responsibility by 100% of your team. A self-sustaining pipeline relies on trust and delegation. And when you empower your team with meaningful responsibilities, that's when you create autonomy. And autonomy, that's where the leaders will thrive. Autonomy, and I guess you would follow that with accountability. So delegation, please, it's not just about getting work off your plate. It's actually about giving team members opportunities to grow, not just opportunities to do your busy work. So let an emerging leader take the lead on that client meeting, manage the budget, solve some very critical challenges. And when you step back and you give them the room to develop the confidence and skills they're going to need to lead in the future by not babysitting them, okay? You also have to make them accountable. When their efforts result in a big win, you celebrate that win with the firm. If their efforts end up creating a problem, they're not going to get punished, but everybody can learn and grow from a mistake. I still do. my fair share of mistakes. I've done that over the past, well, 4 decades, at least in the field of architecture. But as we all hopefully know, every mistake is a learning opportunity. It's an opportunity to grow. And isn't it better to have an emerging leader make a small mistake and then learn from those lessons than to be shielded from ever making a mistake or being accountable for a mistake, for their decisions, good or bad? And when they finally do get into the position of making a big decision, they make a colossally bad decision. You don't want that. You want people to, you know, cut their teeth on simple things that they can actually manage. What do we got here? 5 minutes. I'm gonna bypass this slide here because I want to make room for Q&A, but uh, I guess I do want to thank you all for joining me today to reflect on what we and I just want to reflect on what we've covered here. Leadership is not just a role. It's really a catalyst for transforming your firm. It's just got the power to elevate your team, your firm. I'm really not exaggerating. The impact that you can make on the world by really building a really great team that understands leadership. So as architects, we all know how to design buildings and spaces that inspire. Hopefully they endure. So imagine applying that same creativity and skill and foresight to designing your firm's future, a future where leadership isn't just a title, it's actually leadership is a part of your culture, a future where your team feels empowered and your clients see the value of your collective strength, and your firm thrives for decades to come, with or without you. So the big failures come when firms have the client perceives the founder or the person with all the spotlight on them as their strength. And then if something happens there and they lose their trust in the firm. If it's broader, that light shines on the team. If any one member of that team is actually not holding it all up, the rest of you are there like in a tug of rope kind of a thing. This is not a theory. It's really a call to action. What are you going to do tomorrow after this webinar to start building that leadership culture? It's maybe you're going to schedule a leadership minute. Remember that thing? The end of the last 5 or 10 minutes, and delegate a new responsibility to somebody. Reach out to someone you see as an emerging leader. Every tiny little step you take is going to be, adding to your momentum. And to help you along the way, I invite you to connect with me. You can schedule a free consultation with me at my website, which I'll share in just a moment. We can explore my website for some of my content, the blog articles, downloadable things there. And again, the leadership isn't just about today. It's really about the legacy you're creating for the future. And I truly believe when you invest in leadership, you're investing in the resilience and the success of your firm. And speaking of investment, I've got one more thing to add here. I do want to thank my friends at BQE Software for once again inviting me to speak with you today. I do want to encourage you. Rebecca's going to share a poll question with you right now. Please just say yes to this poll question and allow some of the folks at BQE to give you a demo of their phenomenal business and project management platform. It's called BQE Core. I promise you that the time you spend just looking at it will be well spent, because over the last 4 decades, I have learned that firms that implement smart technology like this, they are not only the high-performing firms, but they use the time and the money they save to invest in building a better firm culture, paying higher salaries, which, by the way, will attract better employees and better clients. When you have technology like this, you're not only able to build a high-performing firm, but you just make being in business fun, and you're providing a structure for creating a very high-valued business. And do your homework. There's about 3 or 4 solutions out on the market that are purpose-built for the AE industry. So make sure you look at them, get a demo from all of them out there. Share with them your particular, firm culture and situation, and make your decision based on that. But let's just start by getting you to look at one of those. And so with that, that poll question will remain up, and we're going to go to Q&A. And I only got like 45 seconds here, but I'm happy, as I said, Rebecca, to stick around and answer any questions that people have.
Yeah,
Maybe
I think
Krista, you
for
want to
those
field them.
that are able to stay on, we do end at 1, and I know people have other things to do after their lunchtime, but we could probably stay on for 1 or 2 minutes.
Terrific.
Thank you both. We have some great questions here, so I hope those of you who can join us can stay like a couple of minutes longer. Okay, Steve, let's get this started. Do you have any advice for emerging leaders who are in a firm where the leadership may be having troubles starting to delegate those critical tasks?
Have them speak with me. Have them watch this webinar. Have a frank discussion with them, either during a performance review if it's coming up soon, or call to have a discussion with them. They clearly, the questioner has an interest in leadership, and it's not being recognized. This is most natural for architecture firms, which are often lifestyle businesses, and they don't fully appreciate that the team that they have assembled is not just getting a paycheck, but has a future that they really care about. So they clearly lack the empathy, and I think it's going to be up to you to be, well, let's just call it the adult in the room for this kind of a conversation, so that they truly know what's going on your mind. But short of doing that, I just direct them to go give me a call. 30 minutes, it's free. Happy to share and enlighten their minds on the subject, and that will allow you to not have that hard conversation on your own.
Thank you. How would you suggest implementing these strategies with a very small firm? We're talking about 5 to 7 person firm here.
Yeah, well, I did kind of talk a little bit about that on the slide, because the kind of effort that's required for the medium-sized firms, and certainly for the large-sized firms, are just not right in your culture. But even if you're the 5 to 7 person firm, you have to have a close enough relationship with each of your employees to know their skills, their interests, their capacity to learn, and mentor them. Don't just tell them that, you're here to do the work and I'm giving you a paycheck and get the work done by, this date and all is good. You're dealing with human beings. And very often it's these smaller firms that really have to have that family culture. Nothing's worse than having a small firm and one person is an outlier, doesn't really fit into your family, and those people don't often last, or when they do go, everybody's happy. So you are really so close. Be the mentor, and be the mentor that's bi-directional, where you let them know you appreciate the things that they have that you don't, so that they can inform you. But I actually think it's a really lovely, beautiful experience to have a small firm like that, where you can be looked upon by your junior staff members in a way, because you're doing it all right, and they'll have incredibly fond memories of you one day when you're no longer there, and they've been able to carry forward the firm, not have to just leave you and hang out their own shingle.
Thank you so much for that. How do you delegate meaningful responsibilities and provide growth opportunities without adding an excessive amount of work to their plates and burning them out?
It's not about adding more work to give them responsibilities. It's when they have work, this is work that challenges them. They feel that the work that they're doing is meaningful work. So it's not like saying what they're doing now is one thing, and what I'm asking them to do is getting more work put on the plate. It's how you serve the plate of food to them that is all the difference. So I don't know. I use the word plates, and now I got to go with it. But you could be cooking in the kitchen and just take all the food you just made and just dump it on a plate and give it to them, or you could elegantly place the food on the plate in an aesthetic way so that they can't wait to dive in and eat it. So I think it's a technique on how you delegate that makes all the difference. And the last thing is it's sometimes a problem where people are very good at a particular skill in your firm, in part of your deliverables. You know, this person's just really great at doing, you know, schedules for our, you know, our CD set, and that's fine. You know, maybe they are good at that, but you do need to continue to make them grow, so they need to take on other responsibilities. If at all possible, you got to carve out some time from their week so that they can focus on overhead things. It's not expected to have a 100% utilized employee where, meaning, you know, every hour of their day is working on a project. There are things that have to happen in the firm. And when you think about it, if you can take a little bit of that off of your plate, you know, okay, we need to build a new template for proposals, you know, take that little bit off of your plate, give it to somebody else to tackle. They've never even seen a proposal before. It's going to be pretty interesting to watch them grow. And then that time you're freed up, you're going to start taking on something that you probably really ought to take on as a partner or principal, which is really about, you know, bringing in more business and developing those client relationships. So hopefully that got through in different ways to answer that question.
Thank you. I know we said 2 minutes, but we have one last one, and we'll be closing. So those of you who we couldn't get to, we're going to answer your questions by email. Was
Okay.
there any complaints from the other staff members when you selected 2 individuals for the leadership path? How did you handle it there?
So no, there wasn't. I mean, we were still pretty young at the time, and I think the 2 individuals I'm talking about were not working in a vacuum. They were working in a team, and I would say if any of them didn't already have the respect of their colleagues, it would have been an issue. But we also had an office with very young architects. So these 2 were actually the most experienced amongst our team. So no, but it is not unexpected that there will be people who feel I should have been chosen to be on the team, kind of a thing. And I think you need to address it. So for those people who are runners up, if there were such a thing in your mind, like I have to pick this person or these 3 people, and there's a 4th person who's not there, I think you need to explain to them that there is a pipeline, okay? Because the thing is sometimes there are people who you are building in the pipeline who just for some reason move. They're no longer with your firm. Maybe they're, you know, moving to another city or another town, whatever, and they're not going to be able to stay at your firm, whatever the reason might be, or they have an amazing opportunity outside, whatever the case is. So there's got to be other people behind them who are going to be able to fill that role. That's why I've asked you, don't just select leaders, create a pipeline of leadership. So everybody feels they're being pulled in on this rope to the future full leadership of in the firm. Okay.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Okay.
All right. Thanks so much. Thanks, everyone. And for those who have stayed, I know about half of you are already gone, but thanks again, Steve. Thanks again, BQE. And we'll see you at our next webinar. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care all.